Hey, welcome into the Big Ten Huddle. We are presented and brought to you by FanDuel. Very much appreciate their partnership with us. Very much appreciate our partnership as well with the College Huddle, which is where you can find the Common Fan podcast, one of the best Nebraska podcasts. It's actually my go-to Nebraska podcast to listen to out there. Don't know if that makes me a smart Nebraska fan or not, but I think TJ can answer that for us. Does it make me a smart Big Ten fan to be listening to the Common Fan podcast, TJ?
Well, I think everyone should listen to the Common Fan
Okay.
podcast to get their Husker fix and for a lot of fun and frivolity. Whether or not that makes you a smart college football fan, I think that remains to be seen.
Yeah, I'm mostly in it for the fun, and the virality, but there's some intelligence
How
in
about
there
that?
as well. No, no,
We have a lot of smart guests on the show. They make us look smart. How about that?
There you go. There you go. Well, we are having TJ on today to talk through some Nebraska stuff. They just got through their bye week, coming off the game against Michigan. Kind of want to get a little bit of where the Nebraska fans stand at. We're going to talk about Dylan Raiola for sure. And there's something, even if TJ and I and me and Nebraska fans might disagree slightly on Dylan Raiola, I think there's something that can bring all of Nebraska fans and me together, and we'll get to that at the end. But first, TJ, why don't you tell people where they can find the Common Fan podcast at?
Sure. So we're on YouTube. Just search Common Fan Podcast on YouTube. You can also go to our website, www.commonfan.co, and there you can get access to all the audio platform, where we are on all the audio platforms, links to all those. YouTube, we do a lot of written content. You can sign up for the newsletter, follow all the social media accounts, etc. So go to commonfan.co, or you can just search Common Fan Podcast on YouTube or your audio platform of choice.
All right, sounds great. Sounds great. And yes, I will tag the YouTube channel of the Common Fan down below as well. So if you want to remain on YouTube, just go down there in the description, and I'll tag it there. All right, TJ, let's talk through. So after the Michigan game, Nebraska sits at 3-1 now. I was one of the biggest proponents in the offseason about Nebraska could possibly make the playoffs, and then I kind of went into my predictions, and Nebraska fans were a little perplexed by me because I didn't pick them to go to the playoffs. My co-host Zach did, so he at least was drinking the Kool-Aid or the Rule-Aid. Sorry, the Rule-Aid in that situation. So, but I'm just one of those people that Nebraska needs to prove it to me a little bit before I pick them to do something that big. They went to a bowl game last year. That was an improvement. I think as long as you get to 8 wins this season, that's an improvement as well. However, I think that there could possibly be more. Like I said, the playoffs this season. Where do Nebraska fans sit right now with this Nebraska program? Hopes, thoughts for the rest of the season?
Yeah, JR, I'm glad you asked this question. I think there's a perception out there of among non-Nebraska fans or non-Nebraskans that all Nebraska fans are like stuck in the 90s or sort of perpetually believe that every year is going to be 1995 again and we're going to play for the national championship every season. I think that's the expectation at Nebraska, and I think it should always be the expectation. We will lose one of the things that makes us special if we lose pursuing that as part of our identity and our expectation. But most Husker fans have been appropriately beaten down after the last decade or so of only 2 bowl games going back to 2016, including last year. I think everyone's optimistic about Matt Rule, and I think they believe he can build something at Nebraska and get us back to being a top 25 competitive program, competing for the playoff, that sort of thing. And I think that's real. I'll tell you, for me, I've said twice now on the podcast, I said after we beat Cincinnati, I said, hey, that's a great win. I'm glad we got out of there with the win. That's not a playoff team. I didn't see a playoff team on the field against Cincinnati. And I said it again after Michigan. Now, we recorded the Michigan episode about 3 hours after the game ended. And I for one, was pretty salty. My co-host Matty O, I wasn't even at the game. Matty O was at the game. He had a little better perspective. But Geoff, our other co-host, was, I think, a little closer to where I was. He'd also had a few beers, I think, when we recorded that one. But so I mean, I just think everyone, look, they're 3-1. The schedule is manageable, and by manageable I mean, the last 10 years of Nebraska football have taught us we can't take anything for granted and should not take any team for granted. But we don't have Ohio State, we don't have Oregon. We got Michigan at home. We get Iowa at home. We do have to go to Penn State. We don't have to play Indiana. So 3 of the 4 playoff teams from last year, we don't play at all. So like it's for any Big Ten team, it's about as manageable as you could hope for. So that schedule lines up well. I do think they're better. They're better on offense. Special teams is better. Defense, it looks like. I mean, we lost a ton of dudes on defense, a lot of senior guys on defense. It looks like they've taken a step back on D, but there's a lot to still be excited about. There's a lot to still play for, to your point, JR. And I think, a lot of folks had the Huskers around 8 or 9 wins going into the season. I always have to remind the guys on the podcast, that means then that we have to suffer through 3 or 4 losses, or like last year, the conversation was like, get back to a bowl game, 6 and 6, 7 and 5. And it was like, okay, like that's progress, but that means 5 or 6 losses that we have to suffer through and yell at each other about. Right. And so, I think, I'll be anxious to see. One thing I do think rules teams, have always played hard. And, they've always like battled, like, we got boat raced by Indiana last year. It's similar to what Illinois suffered through recently. And then we turned around and almost beat Ohio State in in Columbus.
Mm-hmm.
And so like rules teams have never given up. They've always played hard. And we got a stretch now. We go Michigan at home, at Maryland, at Minnesota, Northwestern at home. We got a chance to stack some W's here. I'm not predicting they're all going to be W's, but we got a chance, we're 3-1. We got a chance to be at least bowl eligible by the end of that stretch.
Well, and that's the biggest thing, right? If you are going to turn into one of these programs that hopes for the playoffs, you have to win the games that you're supposed to win. And so with Michigan State coming up this week, they're coming to you. It's not like you're going to Michigan State or anything. This should be a game that Nebraska is able to win. Like you said, you got Maryland, some other teams coming up. No disrespect to Maryland. They're 4-0 right now. They look good. But these are the type of games that it's like, okay, maybe we don't beat Penn State. Maybe we, something happens with Iowa. Who knows? Something like that. But you start moving forward, and these teams that are not the bottom half of not the bottom of the Big Ten. Some of them are in the bottom half, but they're not teams that should be giving Nebraska a consistent threat. Is that kind of the same way you guys are looking at it?
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. When you've been winning 4 or 5 games, or last year 6 games, the next step is to get into that like 7 to 9 win range every year, mm-hmm. Right?
Iowa specializes in that. Yeah,
right. Preferably 8 to 9 wins, right?
Right.
And that's like what I would say is, again, never letting go of that expectation for greatness. That's the next step, and so that involves beating some of those middle of the pack conference teams that we historically have viewed ourselves as better than, but have had a hard time beating in the last 5, 7, 8 years, whatever it's been. And so then ideally, then you win 8 games and 9 games, and then you get back into that upper tier, that upper echelon. But like, you can't skip that step. In fact, it's harder than ever. I know everyone looks at what Curt Cignetti's done in Indiana and thinks, why can't we do that here? It's largely never been done in the history of college football and may never be done again. So I don't know what his secret sauce is, but for everyone else, especially a program, I've said before, Nebraska picked a really bad time to go into the gutter, because it would have been easier, I think, to rebuild and get back to prominence maybe at different times in college football history. But now everybody's got money. Everybody's paying players. Everybody's got conference, TV deals and all those things. And everybody's investing in football. Indiana's investing in football. There was a long time where the Indianas of the world weren't, really even investing in their football program. And so it's harder than ever. It's more competitive than ever. And all that to say, to your point, yes, like if you want to take the next step, which Husker fans hope is not the last step, but the next step is beating some of those middle of the road conference teams, which we ourselves have been at best in recent years. And then getting to that 8, 9 wins, getting to a better bowl game. If the ball, to your point, JR, if the ball bounces our way, we get a couple lucky breaks or win. I felt like Michigan looked like the better team. Couple lucky bounces in that game. And let me say this. I felt like they just as easily could have won by 10 or 14 points as won by 3. But the way that game played out, if we get a stop on their second to last drive, or we even recover the onside kick or something, we could have, point being, we like steal a win that maybe we didn't quite deserve. then maybe you're on the periphery of the playoff conversation. These are like, you can see how delusional Husker fans are, and how, like, where I get myself. This is what I think about when I'm laying in bed at night. But I think, everyone's still thinking about 8-9 wins, and, a couple lucky bounces. Maybe we're talking 9-10 wins. How about that?
Yeah, yeah. And I think if Nebraska gets to 10 wins, I think that you're right there on the edge of the playoffs. I don't know if you get in with that because who knows how they're going to do the scheduling stuff. I mean, we have no idea what the college football playoff committee. I feel like it's going to be the same. I feel like they're just kind of blowing smoke to get the SEC off their back a little bit. But who knows? We've got SEC commentators about ready to run for Congress or Senate or whatever now. So go for it, Paul Feinbaum, whatever you want to do. But I guess let me ask one more thing about the team and the product on the field, and then I want to get into some Dylan Raiola conversation.
Sure.
In that Michigan game, the offensive line, that was a big talking point this offseason, right? You bring in Rocco Spindler, looks like, why am I blanking on his name? Pritchett there was going to be the left tackle, and so you had some more optimism there. Pritchett has not really become who, anybody really anticipated that he would be. He's playing, but he's not playing up to the standard that people thought that he would. And then you go in that game against Michigan, and Michigan, like you said, they looked like the better team. And really, for most of the game, it was on the lines of scrimmage. Are you guys feeling a little bit less optimistic because of the offensive line now? Or are you guys just going back to, hey, this is an amazing Michigan defensive line? That's kind of where I'm at right now. It's like Michigan is just always going to have a good defensive line. It happens sometimes. We just saw Illinois come back after getting manhandled by Indiana, and they were able to come back with a better offensive line. So are you kind of still in that stage, or what are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's a good question, JR. And before I forget, I want to go back to something we were just talking about. I genuinely wonder if Paul Feinbaum giving a speech on the floor of the United States Senate would be just as annoying as Paul Feinbaum giving his college football takes on TV, or if he's like a different person outside of his college football commentating. Anyway,
who knows?
Yeah, who knows? I'm not sure we want to find out. Maybe we want to find out. I don't know anything about.
We're gonna start getting into political Twitter at some point.
Right,
political
right,
YouTube.
Exactly
it's like, we did not mean to get here. We wanted to stay in sports.
Exactly. I think that's why when I think about why I was so angry after the Michigan game, it wasn't even that we lost. It was, this is year 3 of Matt Rule, and the offensive line in particular, like the lines of scrimmage, in my opinion, somewhat contrary to what you just said, those are like, I think it's hard. I mean, they can improve over the course of a season, but if you see some signs for concern on either line of scrimmage, that can usually plague you throughout the course of a season. It's not like, hey, we found this fast running back on the depth chart and converted him to a wide receiver, and suddenly he's making plays left and right. The O-line is, or the defensive line for that matter, is a little bit of a different story. Mm-hmm. And so I could not believe, I mean, Michigan obviously has some dudes, but our on the defensive line, we lost Ty Robinson. He's in the NFL. We lost Nash Hutmaker, who anchored that defensive line for years. Jamari Butler transferred to LSU. We lost our defensive line coach. We lost our defensive coordinator. We lost John Bullock, starting a senior linebacker. So all in that front 7, we lost a ton of dudes. And so I think we have some young talent there, but they're young. And so everyone, I think, expected maybe the D-line wouldn't be as sound as it's been the last couple years. Maybe the defense overall would take a step back. Although nationally, our rank, we rank pretty well in everything except for rushing defense right now. Mm-hmm. But the offensive line in particular, beyond just the 2 transfers you mentioned, there's some other seasoned guys who have played a lot of football on that offensive line, and it was honestly expected to be a strength of the team. Now, a point that many people have made and that I have come to accept a little bit since my anger after the Michigan game is that that's probably one of the best defensive lines and front sevens we're going to face all season long. Mm-hmm. And maybe the best. I mean, USC was just ranked. They fell out obviously after the loss, but we play USC and Penn State. If you look at kind of the 2 ranked teams, we'll see where some of the others end up, but
Iowa will be up there too.
I was always tough up front, of mm-hmm. course, and Minnesota usually is pretty strong on the line of scrimmage as well. But so I guess the point is, like, I think there's reason for hope on the offensive line, but it was frustrating. I mean, Dylan was running for his life most of the game.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's where I had the biggest disagreement with some Nebraska fans on Twitter and stuff like that, is that, yes, the offensive line was an issue, but I'm also of the opinion that, Dylan Raiola, really good arm talent. He does a great job of processing out there. He takes the easy stuff. He doesn't try to do too much, in my opinion. You can talk about the arm angles and stuff like that a little bit, but every quarterback nowadays does arm angles. I mean, that's not anything that's, unique to him. And so you have some of that stuff, but it does concern me a little bit with the mobility. And I'm curious if you guys have any concerns like that as well, because he does seem to have a little bit of a slow step up in the pocket. And it's, to me, he could be one of the best quarterbacks in the nation if he could just get by some of this stuff. Are you kind of in the same range I am? Or are you kind of all the blame on the offensive line? Or kind of where are you at right now with Dylan Raiola, just overall?
Yeah, I mean, they talked a lot in the offseason about how he was working on his mobility and working on his athleticism and all those things. I mean, I think there were definitely times during the Michigan game where I said to myself, or I yelled at the TV screen, perhaps more candidly,
Yeah.
he needs to get rid of it. So just get rid of it sooner or take off sooner. Like some of it, I think was just like hanging out too long and maybe a little bit slow on the decision making front. But if you go back and watch that game, JR, he also escaped several times, and
Mm-hmm.
which bought him time to find open receivers. And so, like, he's not a statue. I mean, he's
Mm-hmm.
not what you would consider a dual threat or a running quarterback. But there's some athleticism there. He's not a statue. And so, I think sometimes it's making the decision sooner, whether you're going to take off and run or whether you're just going to get rid of it, whatever it might be. I think that might be part of it. I do love. I mean, this is Nebraska, so I grew up watching the triple option, and our quarterbacks couldn't throw. They could run, they couldn't throw,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
And then in more recent years, we had guys like Tommy Armstrong and Taylor Martinez and Adrian Martinez, who were more true traditional dual threat quarterbacks. So I love me a good running quarterback. I love a good dual threat quarterback. Don't get me wrong. I don't know that I completely agree with you on. I think sometimes for Dylan, it's a matter of decision making as much as it is the athleticism. I think sometimes he's just going to get sacked, and like
Mm-hmm.
I think he's not going to be. Sometimes you'd watch like a Tommy Armstrong or an Adrian Martinez like get out of something, and you'd be like, how did they do that? And that's probably not going to be Dylan. But he had that whole first drive where we went for it on 4th and 2 at inside the 10-yard line and didn't get it, but we were in position to get points. That whole first drive, I think there were like 3 or 4 plays, maybe 2 or 3, maybe I'm exaggerating, but where Dylan kind of kept him alive with his feet, which allowed him to allowed a receiver to find time to get open and move down the field. So kind of a mixed bag there, but I don't think he's a statue.
Yeah, he's not a statue. And you are right. He's been able to get away from pressure and do some stuff like that every now and then. So he does need credit for that. When I watched that Michigan game, I felt like a lot of that was on Raiola, but I definitely, going back and watching it, could see how Nebraska fans are saying this is more on the offensive line. I mean, there were times when Jayshon Barham and the edge rushers just were completely converging on him, and you could say, take a step up, a second quicker, and you would be fine. And
Right.
so it is difficult to try and figure that out and to try and know what to get to, what is the root cause of the issue. I think Nebraska has good wide receivers. Ja'Cory Barney, obviously. I mean, he had 2 touchdowns in that game. He's been awesome for him this year, and I think Dane Key has been maybe not as good as I maybe expected, but still good. I mean, there's
Yeah.
nothing against him at all. So, but definitely a better running game would help. Emmett Johnson, he's doing everything he can back there. More credit to him, but he's kind of a one-man crew so far. So, any other thoughts on Raiola, the offense, or anything like that before I get into our final thing that we're just going to rant on for like 5 or 10 minutes?
Sure. No, look. I think you covered it right. I think that's right. I think we'd love to see us run the ball a little bit better. We love Emmett on our show. We've been talking about him for a long time, and I think he's really talented. I think some of that too, though, is the commitment to the run game, and it's not
Mm-hmm.
currently part of our identity. I mean, they say they want to run the ball, but the numbers say otherwise. And you have this probably the best group of wide receivers we've had, and you could argue more than a decade. Dylan's obviously very solid, so there's a reason for that. So I'm really curious to see how a lot of this continues to unfold. We're only a third of the way through the season. I think Dane Key's got more to offer against some of these teams. I think this offense is going to have more under the hood. I'm pretty excited about that, but I'm also like, I'm improvement mode. Like we talked about at the beginning, I'm improvement
Mm-hmm.
mode for the Huskers. Like, yes, they could win 8, 9 games, maybe 10 games if we get a little bit lucky in a few ways. But like recent Husker fan experience would suggest we could just as easily lose 6, 7, 8 games, right? So like we in rule every year for rules been taking a step in the right direction, but I'd say I'm still in prove-it mode. I got to see it. And, we're 10 and a half point favorite against Michigan State. To me, that seems generous. I'd love to I'd be dancing in the streets if we beat them by 2 touchdowns. Don't get me wrong, but I would like to keep seeing it for a while.
For sure. All right. So the thing that I think you and I are going to find a lot of common ground here is, folks, we have got to stop with the Patrick Mahomes comparisons and everything else with all of Dylan Raiola. I know he has a similar haircut. I know that people, want to look at him and say, oh, he's Patrick Mahomes. There are pictures floating around social media right now where they're like Dylan Raiola and Patrick Mahomes next to each other, and it's like, those aren't the same sunglasses. Those aren't it's not exactly the same way he looks. Like, I can see similarities, but it's not like he's trying to do all of the exact same stuff. You can say he has a similar routine, but let's be honest. Anybody here who was 19, 20 years old, I forget how old he is. Yeah, he's a sophomore, so he's like 19 years old. So anybody back then, you had a favorite player. You had somebody that you wanted to emulate and look at. And honestly, it's not that bad to look at Patrick Mahomes. He's a really good football player to look at him and do that. But some of this crap he gets for like the side arm angle stuff, it's like, you are seeing quarterbacks all over college football do that right now. Do I think there are times when he goes to it and maybe he doesn't need to? Sure. I think maybe he could step to the side rather than doing the sidearm. But at the end of the day, if he's trying to get the ball there quicker, that's what he does. It's not necessarily a bad thing against him. So I just think it's really, really lazy analysis to be like, yeah, he looks like too much like Patrick Mahomes and he's trying to be him. I just think it's lazy analysis. I think it's trying to take a shot at Nebraska for some reason. I don't know why people are trying to take so many unnecessary ones. Nebraska's had enough shots taken at him. But TJ, I have a feeling you're going to agree with me here.
I do. I have so many thoughts on this. I'll try not to babble for too long.
That's okay.
But first of all, like he does kind of look like Mahomes, and I mean it's coming into last year. I think especially like there are things like he maybe modeled his haircut after the guy, or maybe he tried to dress like him or whatever. I also like I think to your point, first of all, 18, 19-year-old kid, whatever he is, he's looking up to and emulating one of the best quarterbacks of his generation. Who cares? First of all, who cares? Second of all,
you know how many dudes were saying they wanted to be like Peyton Manning? You know how many dudes were saying I want to be the next Tom Brady?
Like Michael Jordan, right?
Or Michael Jordan, yeah.
MJ, right? Yeah. That's what. So like, and then like Mahomes has worked out, or excuse me, Raiola has worked out with Mahomes. They know each other. He has worked out with Mahomes' quarterbacks coach, right? So it's like there's another layer to it. Then on top of that, it's gotten so ridiculous and out of proportion. It's insane. First of all, even going back to last year, it's not just like Barstool or some individual guys who are, college football podcast hosts or more online presences. It's like the Fox college football Twitter account saying like, Dylan Raiola doing his best Patrick Mahomes or whatever, or On3 or some of those. They all know it gets clicks. They all know it gets engagement. And for whatever, like Husker fans quickly jump to his defense, but just as quickly you have tons of other fans from other fan bases. They love to jump on that and make fun of him and grab onto it. Where I think it's gotten out of control is it honestly feels like, I'll just say some names. Tom Fornelli, Ari Wasserman. I actually felt like one of the things I saw of Andy Staples seemed pretty fair, but he's kind of engaged in some of these conversations too. Bud Elliott, is that his name?
I think he's on the cover 3 with Fornelli too.
Yeah. It seems to me that those guys, like when you say something like, oh, he seems like a nice kid, he seems like a good player, but I can't even with this because of the Mahomes stuff. It's just so weird. That's a you problem as a commentator or as an announcer or whatever it is that you are. If you're a professional and you're supposed to assess college football players, and you can't, because he kind of looks like Patrick Mahomes, you can't give your analysis on whether or not he's a good player. That's a you problem. And we're talking about a kid, he was a true freshman last year. He had some ups and downs. So far this season, he's got almost about 1,140 passing yards, 11 touchdowns, only one interception. He's completing about 76% of his passes. He is like unequivocally having an excellent year. He's unequivocally an excellent quarterback in 2025. I'm not saying he should be leading the Heisman conversation or anything like that. But if your takeaway from that is Bud Elliott's line was, he's so extra, I just can't, like, what does that even mean? What does he's so extra even mean? And so it drives me nuts. And then to your exact point, what drives me nuts more than anything now is everybody, like, it's so obvious that it gets you the engagement that you're so desperate for, apparently. Not you, JR, but some of these guys.
No, I know what you mean.
They're so desperate for that they'll do anything. It's like they're both wearing sunglasses. The haircuts are no longer the same. The sunglasses don't look the same, but you just put a picture up next to them. Their faces they look kind of alike. They look similar. And so it's like, no, he's not. They just both happen to be wearing sunglasses in this picture. Or, Raiola, there was one where Raiola was flexing, and one of these accounts was like Dylan Raiola doing his best Patrick Mahomes. Do you know how many college and professional football players flex after they make a play or after they do something? And the last thing I would say, to your point on the sidearm thing, no college coach that's trying to win games, the consequence of which, if you don't win those games, is that you lose your job and you have to go move your family again and get another job. No coach is going to put up with something they think is not going to help their team, right? So if he's just sidearming it because he wants to look like Patrick Mahomes, the coach is going to nip that in the bud. Guys are like, lots of guys do it now. Some quarterback coaches teach that sort of thing, right? And in some cases, it's like, oh wow, like that allowed him to like get by the defender or whatever it was, right? So we always joke on our program, we're the Common Fan podcast. We're not X's and O's guys. We're not technicians when it comes to playing quarterback or anything like that. But some of this stuff is so obviously engagement farming. It's so obviously overblown. And some of the stuff that these guys say, it's like, you can't be taken seriously. You're supposed to be a professional in what you do in evaluating college football teams and players. And you're making it about what the kid looks like, or the fact that he might dress similarly to Mahomes sometimes, or whatever else. And then they also, like, we did get into a little bit of a Twitter fight with, I think it was R8. But then
he's typically responding a lot. That makes sense.
Yeah. And then, but then they want to backtrack and we didn't say anything. We just made this observation about his play, or that observation about his play. And it was like, I think it was Fornelli again that was talking about Bryce Underwood is further ahead of Raiola just on his like pre-snap like calls and plays. And it's like, there were like some very serious football people jumping in being like, you're way out of your depth here. Like, again, it's not even, Bryce Underwood's a very good quarterback, but what he's being asked to do as a true freshman compared to what Dylan's being asked to do now is not even remotely on the same planet. Again, I'm not an X's and O's guy or an expert on this stuff, but it just feels like these guys, one, look, we're all doing our best here, but maybe they don't know as much as they pretend to. But two, perhaps more likely, is it's totally engagement farming. Right? It's all
I can sympathize with
and all that.
Right. I can sympathize with Nebraska fans on that. I mean, I'm not shy on here. I've been an Ohio State fan all my life, and that happens to Ohio State fans all the time. You find the littlest thing, go look at Dave Portnoy. Anytime he gets a camera in front of him, and Ohio State even remotely comes up, crying Ryan Day. At this point, I don't even care. It's like, all right, dude, say whatever you want. But there are Ohio State fans out there that will take the bait every single time, and this guy's an idiot. This guy, and it's like, you're doing exactly what he wants you to do. You're coming after him and, responding in the comments. And, yes, Fox made a terrible decision to bring Dave Portnoy on, in my opinion, if they wanted to actually be true on, like, college football analysis. But guess what? That's not what get clicks nowadays. Yeah. People don't share the college football analysis. What they share and what they comment on is Dave Portnoy saying, crying Ryan Day, and they all get mad. And that's how you get seen more often. So it just kind of is what it is.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. And to your point, like, I'll see other Husker fans commenting on this stuff, and I'll think to myself, okay, everybody just needs to chill out and start ignoring this stuff. But then I myself, I don't chill out or start ignoring this stuff. So I just think it's,
We've all been there. We've all been there.
Too bad when we're talking about a young man who's having a really good season, and no one's talking about that because all this other stuff is such a distraction. And I don't think the way that people are talking about, I don't think Dylan deserves the way that people are talking about it or the way they're treating him. I don't think he's brought that kind of thing on himself.
Mm-hmm. I will put my hand up for one moment. I did make the Mahomes comparison when Luke Lindenberg or Lindenmeyer, I'm forgetting. Lindenmeyer. When he got engaged, I did make the comparison slightly. I said, this is not Taylor Swift, but just saying his tight end got engaged, so there's a little bit going on here.
I think that's acceptable. We'll accept, the common fans will accept that one.
Okay. All right. Excellent. So, well, hey, that's the Nebraska kind of update coming off the bye week for you all. Definitely wanted to bring TJ on and just kind of address some of the Dylan Raiola stuff, get some of the thoughts out there. I know that I'm not going to win over, every Nebraska fan or anything, but just kind of put my thoughts out there a little bit more and agree with TJ that Dylan Raiola is having an excellent year so far. I ranked him number 6 in the Big Ten in quarterbacks this last week.
That's a little low, JR. That's a little low. But anyway,
I know. I get it. But as far as I'm concerned, there's still a lot of room to grow. He can keep getting better. And honestly, we might need to start valuing that Cincinnati win more than we did at the beginning of the season. Because right now, they're 3-1, and they're favored over Iowa State this weekend, TJ.
They are. And I'll tell you what gives me a lot of hope out of that one is how good their offense has been since they played us. Mm-hmm. We held Brendan Sorsby to, I think, 69 yards passing. They did run for over 200 yards on us, which was possibly a canary in the coal mine. But about half of that was Sorsby getting loose on a handful of runs. So you say to yourself, okay, well, you get a handle on that problem, then, it's not as bad. But in any event, I think that win might start looking better and better. I mean, that's a pretty solid team. Sorsby's a really good quarterback. We have to keep winning too, or it won't matter. Right. But that's I've been impressed with and trust me, that's the kind of thing Husker fans pay attention to. Husker fans are going to be watching Cincinnati the rest of the year now.
Yeah, well, at least you're not having to watch Old Dominion like Indiana fans are. Indiana fans are like out here rooting for Old Dominion. I get it, but I'm like, man, I could not do that. I can't go out. I can root for Texas, for Ohio State, I guess, for a little bit, but can't do Old Dominion. So
just can't bring yourself to care about ODU.
Yeah, not really. I mean, I will say, I think they're like third amongst group of 5 teams, or no, they're second amongst group of 5 teams in ESP and FPI. They have the second best chance to win out and go undefeated the rest of the year. We found that out looking up on the show the other day. So we'll see how it turns out this season. But there you go.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So, all right, TJ, you want to tell people where they can find the Common Fan app one more time?
Sure. Go to commonfan.co. That's commonfan.co, or you can just go to YouTube and search Common Fan Podcast. And thanks for having me, JR. Good to see you, man.
Of course. And yes, you can find the Common Fan Podcast down below in the description. I'll put it down there, tag it, and you can get your content, your Nebraska fun, and some analysis. Not really the X and O's like TJ said, but that's okay. You can have fun. You don't need X's and O's. Just go listen to a podcast and have fun.
Exactly. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a good one. We'll see you next time.